Welcome back to another beginner-friendly acrylic painting. Today we're going to do something that would be perfect as Valentine's gift. It has a little bit of a Valentine flavor to it. So let's get started. We'll start with the same three colors we always use: phthalo blue, quin magenta, and benzimidazzolone yellow. We'll also have some titanium white. So the first thing we're going to do is lay in a sky for our fluffy Valentine-shaped tree. So I'm going to start with some titanium white and grab just a tiny bit of phthalo blue and lay that down. Let's have a little more titanium white. And you'll see that I'm mixing on the canvas. I'm letting that have a lot of activity back there. We're going to have a nice big tree that's going to be in the shape of a heart. So it'll be really nice for Valentine's Day. I'm going to blend in that a little bit more, wipe my brush, and let's put a little titanium white here. Just get a little bit of that texture going. Let's put in a little more. We're going to have a bit of a low horizon line. So I'm going to come down here with my blue, pretty far down. And our tree is going to take up most of the sky, so you don't really need to worry too much about what the sky looks like. We just want that nice blue back there. Okay, we've got a nice low horizon line. Next we're going to put in our landform. I'm going to wipe my brush. I'm using my number 12. I'm going to wipe my brush really good because I want my land to be reddish. And so I'm going to pick up quin magenta. I'm going to lay that down right here. I'm going to have a really nice kind of magenta landform here. I'm going to have a big pink tree in the shape of a heart. Perfect for Valentine's Day. Okay, get that all taken care of there. Make sure we have a nice horizon line here. Okay, now we need a 5-minute drying time, so you know what to do. Put this aside for 5 minutes in front of a cool fan or use a cool hair dryer. Give it 5 minutes and come right back. Okay, we're back. So what we're going to do now is create our big fluffy heart-shaped tree. I have my number 6, and so I'm going to make a tree trunk here and then a big fluffy heart-shaped tree. So let's make our tree trunk darkish. We're going to take our quin magenta and a little phthalo blue and make a dark purple. And then we're going to add just a touch of yellow to that to brown it down ever so slightly. And now we'll start right here. We're going to have our tree is going to take up most of the center of our painting. So we're going to have the tree trunk right here in the center, like this. Just very simple. And that's going to be our tree trunk. I'm going to wipe my brush. Now, just so you get the shape of the heart correct, let's take a paint marker like this one. And let's draw the shape of our tree just to make sure we stay within the shape. So just using dots, let's start here in the center and just make some dots roughly in the shape of a heart. This just gives us a guideline so that we can make our heart work with our tree trunk. I'm going to make it a little wider here. Make sure the center works. And that's just a guideline. You can almost not see that, but it's really handy to use a paint pen when you start doing shapes like this. Okay, I've got my number 6 and I washed it so it's clean, and I wiped it on the paper towel so it has no water. Now we're going to have fun mixing up a lot of pinks and reds. So come over to your Quin Magenta and get your titanium white. Start with some pinks. Get those going. And just start laying down little dabs. Cover up your pink outline. Leave some air space. You don't have to fill in everything. But make sure that you break that line that you made with the dots, with the pink paint pen. Make sure you break that. You don't want that edge being a uniform edge. Use the point of your brush to make a really nice fluffy edge. And that's where we start. Make sure that edge is nice and fluffy. Put some more on the inside. Now let's go a little darker. We're going to pick up our Quin Magenta and we're going to go a little darker. And again, I'm just patting with my brush. Pat, pat, pat. So you have these really pretty shapes that your brush made. We're going to keep the dark primarily on the side here. Wipe my brush. Now I'm going to come back over here and pick up some white. Whoops, got a little blue on my brush there. Let's pull that up. Get that off my palette. Go on this side, got a little white here. Coming up on top of these guys, patting again. Wipe my brush, a little more pink. And just keep building up that texture on your tree so that you have that really nice heart shape. I'm going to get a little more titanium white. Now the Quin Magenta is a transparent pigment, so make sure you add enough titanium white to that magenta so that it is opaque on top of that blue sky. Just going to keep patting. Just get it nice and fluffy. Using the tip of my brush so that I don't have a round edge, but I have a more organic feel to the edge. Let's get a little more of the darker Quin Magenta. Come back in here. And just keep building that tree until it is nice and fluffy. I'm going to get a little more Quin Magenta, a little more titanium white. Roll my brush in that paint. That gives my brush fully loaded, but it also gives it a point. Just keep building. Now we're going to let this dry for a little bit, because we have some more work to do there, but we're going to let that dry for a little bit. And I'm going to come back to the base of my tree and give it a little bit more substantial look. It's a little bit on the thin side. So let's start here and pull down. And then let's give it a couple of limbs. And it should be a little bit wider at the base. A little bit wider at the base. There we go. Now our tree is a little bit more substantial. Wipe my brush again. I'm going to wash it this time because I don't want any of that purple on my brush. Back to my Quin Magenta and my Titanium White. A little bit more of that going on here. Now I'm going to warm things up just a little bit. I'm going to grab a tiny bit of that yellow and put it into my Quin Magenta. Because you want a variety of colors. You don't want everything to just be one color. Let's put some Titanium White into that. This is just a little bit warmer pink. And we'll put that in several places. A little more Titanium White. Wipe my brush. I'm going to go a little bit darker over here. I have a little bit of my Quin Magenta, tiny, tiny bit of my phthalo, just a tiny bit, not too much. And I'm going to put a little bit of that in here. Then I'll come back with my pink mixture on top of that and let it blend right on the tree itself, right on the canvas. And we're starting to build a really nice tree here. Let's get more of our Titanium White. Let's get more of our Titanium White and our Magenta and make a really light pink. We're going to come back on top. Really want those colors to not blend so much, but to give varieties so it's not one uniform look. I'm going to get a little bit more of my Magenta just by itself. Come back in here. Got a little bit of white on my brush. Okay, come back in here. Blend that a little bit. Just keep working into that wet paint. Make sure you get those nice edges with your brush. And let's start. This should be maybe our final layer. Let's see. We'll see here in a minute if we need a little more. Well, that looks pretty fluffy. I think our dark right here is just a little bit too dark. So I'm going to grab Quin Magenta all by itself and come in here, making sure I get that fun edge. Get that really fun edge in there with my paintbrush. So that's a pretty fun fluffy tree. I think we'll do just a little bit more over here on the edge to make it really fluffy and fun. I'm mixing that Quin Magenta again. And this might be a little bit dark. Let's see. Well, you know, I kind of like it. Let's leave it there. Need that edge here to be more organic. This is just a really fun Valentine project, and it doesn't take very long to do that. Get a little bit more here in the center. Okay, I think we've got a pretty good Valentine-shaped tree there. Now let's dress up our ground here a little bit. We need a few little posies and things. So I'm going to go into my Quin Magenta. I've got a bunch of pinks going over here. I'm going to just come in here and paint around on the ground here. Just activate it. Give it some texture, just so it's not so flat. You can come right up to that tree. It's not going to hurt anything. And in a minute, we will come back and we will put some fun little heart-shaped posies on the ground around our tree. So I'm going to set this aside to dry. Finish my ground over here. Let's set this aside to dry for about 5 minutes. I want this bottom to be really dry so that I can take my paint pen and make little flowers shaped like hearts. Okay, let's get that going. There, now we've got some fun stuff going on the ground there. All right, set that aside to dry for 5 minutes and we'll be right back to do the finishing touches. Okay, we're back and we're going to dress up the ground around our tree here with some fun flowers. Now I have a couple of paint pens here. This is a medium-sized paint pen, so it's going to be too big for our tiny flowers. This fine one will work. Let's put a couple of little tiny flowers out there. First, let's give them some stems. So I'm going to use a very fine green, and we'll have some really fun little flowers around on our ground, around the tree, and things like that. Really fun. It's really a lot of fun to do this with paint pens especially. So I'm just creating lots of little stems with my paint pen. And now I can make a few little flowers with my pink paint pen, and I can also use a very small paintbrush. This is a Princeton #1, and we'll paint a couple of flowers as well. So let's make some little hearts here. Now remember that the paint pen is acrylic paint, and so you have to let them dry just like you do any other acrylic paint. And this particular color is not really going to pop up enough on this canvas, so we're going to need to do a little bit of painting on these little hearts to make them really pop. But that's no problem, we can do that. Okay, we've got a few little hearts there. Let's have one more right here. It's really fun to do these with your paint pen, it's so easy. Okay, now we're going to have a few that we're going to paint ourselves. So I'm going to use a really small paintbrush. This is a Princeton #1, and I'm just going to get a little white. My white seems to have blue in it, so let's have some fresh titanium white. Put a little bit of fresh titanium white right here. Wipe my brush to make sure I don't have any blue on it. And just grab a little bit of that titanium white. And we'll just paint some little flowers here. And you can see that white really pops up nicely on the canvas. So I think what we probably want to do is go back to our hearts and paint them in with a little bit lighter color. So we just give ourselves a few little posies here. And then we'll come back and do some more work on our hearts. Super fun and easy little holiday, Valentine's holiday present. You can do a number of these and then you can give them as gifts. So much nicer than a Valentine's card. Okay, I'm going to go back into these hearts here and I'm going to get a really bright pink and fill those in because they're just not bright enough. So we need a really light pink. It's got a lot of white in it. And that's one of the things when you're working with these transparent pigments, you have to really be aware of the fact that they need titanium white to stand up and be seen on top of the darker colors. So that's going to look better than our other hearts that weren't quite bright enough. A little bit more titanium white. And it really pays to get a good brush. This Princeton brush holds a nice point. And when you're painting small like this, you really want a brush that does what you tell it to do. Not a brush that's all of a sudden going to have hairs sticking out and ruin your painting. Couple more hearts here. They're easiest to paint if you do them in ovals, one oval after the other. So here's an oval, and then here's an oval. That one got a little lopsided. Let's make it a little bit bigger. There we go. Just paint them like two ovals. One oval and another oval. Like that. There. Okay, that's much better than the paint pens. All right, now finally, let's have a little bit of complementary color. We're just going to have a few little dots. I'm using a teal paint pen and just a few little dots in there just to give our little flower area some interest. So simple. You don't have to stress out about leaves and bushes and all that kind of stuff. And one more little tiny bit we're going to do with a yellow. Just a little tiny, make sure it's loaded well. And sometimes, just like with white, the yellow will not be opaque enough. So if it's not opaque enough, just come back and do those little yellow dots again. put those in there, a few of those little yellow dots. And there we have it. That is our Valentine-shaped tree, our heart-shaped tree with a few little flowers in the front. That makes a really fun little Valentine gift for someone. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that beginner-friendly acrylic painting. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. And remember what I always say, keep painting.